All right, welcome everybody. We will start this meeting. Let's get underway and start. And Veterans Day today. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, welcome. One thing, well, the only thing on the agenda for tonight is discussing our use of our Bett trademark and giving staff additional guidance on the governance of the trademark. And just want to offer some commentary. You know, I understand, I completely understand that the temperature has risen on this particular topic. Sometimes it's well-placed passion, other times it has been not well-placed passion. And one thing on the government side, when we're engaging with our taxpayer and our community at all levels of government, it's incumbent upon us to give precise communication and engage us in a more meaningful way that causes the temperature to lower. And that is what I hope we can accomplish coming out of this meeting here, and some things we can improve upon going forward. So that is one objective coming out of this. And also, commentary on social media, it just can get out of hand. And I've said this before, you cannot engage paid staff. You just have to leave them out of it. Us here, this body, elected body, we're always fair game, absolutely. Okay, but paid staff, people need to come to work, do their jobs without thoughts that decisions they're making on the day-to-day basis are gonna end up social media. And that just causes we have a hard enough time keeping morale up around here. It just causes our morale of the district to go down. So please, for those that may be watching or here in the room, if you can just help influence that we really need to keep our eye on the ball on that commentary. And, you know, I didn't receive any emails on this, but I saw a lot of screenshots on social media, okay? And that's just not constructive to helping us improve these problem sets in a meaningful way. Okay, I think I've said enough on that. So, all right, we'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you, President Larkin. So the goal tonight is just to provide a bit of background information in terms of the evolution of our brand, some of the work that's been done over the last few years, and what we see as some next steps for this evening. In your packets tonight, you have duplicates of things you've already received before, but I thought it might be helpful for you to have it all in one place. You have a letter kind of talking about the trademark, how it came to be, what the district's responsibility is around that trademark. You have Board Policy 909, the first district branding guidance that was developed in 22-23, and then the branding guidelines that were sent to the board in May of 2024 and was sent to all staff in June of 2024. So just for your reference, I'll be kind of going back and forth through some of those documents tonight. So when we look back at the evolution of our district and our brand, what history will tell us is that the earliest use of our most current bulldog that we can identify seems to have started to appear in about 1967. Over the years, there's been variations. Things have been in the 70s, the Bett graphic kind of was developed and started to become part of our landscape in our district. Fast forward many years, and you look into the fall of 2021, we started down this path of developing some graphics around the phrase "better together," highlighting the Bett in our from our district. And then during the 21-22 school year, in working with the board that we had at the time, the current branding work started. So there was discussion about identity with our stakeholders, students, parents, staff, and a variety of community individuals, and a survey went out to our stakeholders. The feedback from that was, gave us information about the strength of our graphic and a desire to have a bulldog graphic that was unique to our district rather than the common use clip art that had been used over the years. In April and May of 2022, Celeste and our SBO at the time, Mrs. Collier, worked with our coaches who ran summer camps to kind of update some of that paperwork and look at that distinction between district sponsored and non-district sponsored, meaning about where income and revenue was booked, whether it came into the district or did not come into the district. And then as 2022 progressed, the decision to develop branding standards in the district for consistency became direction we were given. And then there was some interest to look at potentially updating the bulldog graphic to create maybe more of a unique piece to that. In the fall of 2022, there was a branding and identity survey that went out about our district graphics, qualities, what did the community see. Feedback we got from that survey indicated pride, what our logos or our graphics told us represented our pride, our community, our excellence, our strength. And in a new design, community stakeholders, staff, students, parents wanted to see a design that represented the strength that we exude as a district, competitive, but likable and unique to Bettendorf. And then there was some conversation about whether we, like other districts across the state, continue with the individual elementary logos, or we look to create one district-wide logo. And at that time, 75% of the feedback from our elementary stakeholders indicated they wanted to keep their identities and their individual mascots. We launched into branding focus groups, SIAC committee, PEC, staff, certified and classified groups, and we learned from students that they value confidence, intelligence, assertive, likable, fierce. But they also, in elementary, wanted our bulldog to be kind, respectful, smart, but fierce at the same time. What was interesting as we progressed through this group, the feedback was interesting. What our community wanted was, what our community identified as being some of their favorite choices was the staff's least favorite and vice versa. So we were at complete odds, I guess you would say. So we just continued through that work. In August, we updated some of the logos that we will see on our website and our stationery, made sure we standardized colors. And we went as so far last January to work with some of our high school art teachers to see if there were students interested in creating a unique graphic. As that work we put that on pause based on other feedback, and at the same time, we simultaneously moved through the trademark process for our Bett graphic. That was approved and registered in January of 2024. In March, we worked to develop a branding guide so that sites had guidelines, and the district had guidelines around colors and fonts and so we had consistency in that brand. And like I said earlier, in May, those updated branding guidelines, which are at the end of your packet that have the black front page, is what was shared with the board in May and then shared with the entire district in June. And then over the summer, those guidelines were shared with other community groups as through our director of communications. As those groups, we became aware of who was overseeing those groups and how we could support that. So on our webpage around branding, I'm going to read a statement of, so why? Why do we care about branding? Why do we care for consistency? consistency. As a school district, as we grow, as we develop, as we change over time, it becomes increasingly important that the district protect its name, brand, and reputation. It's also important to the district's identity and image to maintain consistency and appropriate use of school mascots, names, and logos. A logo is more than just an illustration. It defines and identifies the district and our schools within the community, and we want to seek to protect these images and use for the events, activities, and materials that benefit the district and further its mission. So in summary, before I get into some options that we will present the board tonight, as our board president alluded, I am saddened and disappointed by the amount of negative social media traffic and misinformation, and I think the misinformation is the piece that saddens me the most. To date, I have not been personally contacted. No one has reached out seeking to understand or clarify or get the facts about what this process is about. As we became aware of groups, as we became aware of intended uses, our director of communications worked with those groups to share the updated process, to share information, to clarify questions, but yet, as was shared earlier, there was a lot of traffic out on social media. I didn't see all of it, I only saw what was screenshot and sent to me, but it made me sad to see that there was misinformation. Such as, I think there was information out on social media that we were not gonna let our community groups ever use our facilities again. It was never a discussion, ever. We value those programs. We recognize and appreciate that as an organization, we are stronger and better when we all work together. We value our community groups and appreciate all that they do to offer students and their families outstanding extra and co-curricular opportunities, to learn more about the sports they're passionate about, to become stronger athletes, and as a result, I truly believe stronger students in the classroom because of the lessons that they learn from the coaches and the volunteers that support them in their community groups until they reach our middle school and high school programs. To clarify, the district has never communicated to a group that they were going to be banned from using district facilities, nor the use of the Bulldog or Bettendorf. As the owner of a registered trademark, our district, Bettendorf, has an affirmative obligation to monitor use of its registered trademark. As it states in the district's branding webpage, which I just read previously, we have a responsibility to protect our name, our brand, and our reputation. And so with that affirmative obligation that we have to monitor that use. We have to work with those that would like to use that trademark so that it can protect the registered piece of that, but also reflect positively on our district and not negatively. Board Policy 909 does state when it's permitted and when it's not permitted. As I've shared with some today in conversations that I have, the board in front of you, any school board, are the only ones that can update to policy. Staff cannot do that. So, with all that being said, thank you to Celeste, who has done a lot of work to really dig into this and help us draft some options for the board to consider tonight. So I will hand should be enough for this side. So I will walk you through this document. Celeste, do you have one? Okay, so you have one. Follow Jamie, do you want? Okay. So our current practice per our policy, access restricted to district and school use. Use of the district graphics are reserved for the official designation of district school program and events. Groups excludes the district, schools, students, and staff for official school activities and programs and parent organizations within the district. In terms of vendors, The sale of district branded items specifically representing the district contract for use will stipulate that a percentage of the proceeds or license fee go to activities, athletics and activities, or the foundation, not to the district. And the trademark impact, there's a clear understanding that the use of the district graphics or Bett identifies a district event or program and that everything connected to the brand is in line with the values of the district. So as you open up that use of that graphic, you have, in order to continue to have it registered, you have to make sure that whomever is using that adheres to the district guidelines, the district policies, and the district procedures. So there has been a request that has come in for one of our community feeder programs to be able to use the registered trademark graphic. And so part of the process that has been updated recently is that through board policy 909, it does state that other groups can request the use with prior written approval from the superintendent or designee. And so I know an online application process was created recently, and there was requests to have conversation around how are we going to define groups moving forward. Currently, in the far left of that column, our groups are what I said earlier: district, the schools, students and staff for official school activities, and parent organizations. One proposal tonight is to eliminate any restricted use, that we could open it up to any and everyone that wants to use it. So anybody, a religious affiliation, another group in the community, or an athletic feeder program. It would be unrestricted access for all groups and no restrictions on the use of the Bett graphic. Or if we wanted to continue to promote kind of that we have this unique identity, this unique brand, the other would be the extension of what group is defined as, to include our coach camps for our youth in the summers, predominantly. Most of those camps, I'll look at Coach Wiley, are run in the summer. I don't know of any that are run winter break, are there? Is there some run in the winter? Okay, thank you, Allison. But predominantly in the summer, and then community youth programs. For example, our youth wrestling club, or a youth basketball association, or a youth softball or football. There would be there still, per the board policy, would need to be an application request and written license agreement that would need to be created if the board chose to go this direction. The design use would still need to be approved by the district before printing or publication, just as is now. Coaches know that. They work with Zach to get, even for their seasons, their apparel for the season approved. They would have to adhere to the guidelines in the board policy while wearing the graphic, such as, just like what we would expect district staff behavior to be. They would be held to the same school standards and values, because we want everyone's actions when they're wearing our identity to reflect the positive image and integrity of the district. We'd also, as part of that written agreement and application request, there'd be an understanding that where those graphics are used on websites or in stores selling the merchandise, that some type of a statement, disclaimer statement, would be visible to the public, indicating that they're authorized to use the district graphic in recognition of their support for our district youth, but they are not officially associated or sanctioned as part of the school district. Makes sense? Because they're not our employees. The income coming in is not receipted into the district in any way. Just as the policy currently points out, you cannot use the logos in conjunction with products such as, or content or activities that could be threatening or abusive or vulgar, or could indicate activities that we as a school district wouldn't endorse, such as alcohol or tobacco or anything to that effect, which is outlined in the policy currently. And I think I just covered both of the last two bullet points in there together. I'm going to put them all together. Celeste, did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
Okay, please make sure I didn't. So with that, what questions from the board? What comments, feedback, concerns, questions do you have?
I think we'll go around clockwise here and give everyone a chance to talk. Please keep your comments concise, and by the way, I'm leaving at 6:10, so if we're still here at 6:10, I will be departing stage left. So, why don't we start out here with Director Champion? And
I don't have any questions. I appreciate you working on option A. Thank you.
okay, well, we just go clockwise then, Director McGivern?
Okay, so if I'm understanding this here, this option A here lays out who would still have to go through the process of an application. There would still be an agreement as to, following these branding guidelines, which you can and cannot do with this. But everybody that falls in here, and the only thing I would mention is that the community youth programs that would include any ones that are not existent now but may come into existence in the future, correct? I mean, this wouldn't be the summary list. This would include any potential feeder programs for, say, whether it's activities or sports that we don't currently have a feeder program for.
Like growth opportunities that may come up in the future.
Right, this would incorporate all of that as well, when we work.
I think such as would
Yeah,
cover you with
yeah,
that.
okay.
And I think it'd be perfectly reasonable, a group has to establish itself.
Correct.
Right.
So
You know,
you're gonna have
you can't just
obviously a
create
huge
a whole bunch
variance of, this
Yeah.
club's been around for 30 years, this is the stuff they're doing for the district versus somebody that's trying to get one started and they just don't have the opportunities that the other clubs
after a
have.
couple of years, sure.
Sure. As of this point, I'm okay for right now.
I totally agree with Director Champion, with Director McGivern. I think it's great for our youth feeder programs. They've kind of been the success story for our district for many, many years. The sooner that these kids get started using these logos, the more successful they are, and they pack the stadiums, they pack the theaters, they pack wherever we have facilities for these kids to perform in engage in better publicity for our district. So I think it's great. I think for things in the future as well, for example, a middle school debate club or a middle school chess club or a middle school book club, possibly open up that for those kids down the line. But I think I'm like what's written there in option A.
All right, Director Lynch?
As I read that last bullet point,
Which one, Richard?
under option A,
Okay.
First section of access?
yes.
Okay.
What I understand that to mean is that some groups may have to make choices. And if they get a sponsorship from FanDuel or Joe's Bar,
Distributor.
then they would not be authorized to use the Bett logo in the same item. Am I understanding that correctly?
You are. That is correct.
So just to clarify, so we all understand, what you're saying is if there was, let's say, a shirt with a list of sponsors that sponsor this particular organization, on that particular merchandise that includes those names of those vendors, so forth and so on that particular merchandise, you wouldn't show the Bett logo on that merchandise. But if it were some other thing that just said their club, then they would be able to use. I just want to be clear that that's what you're saying.
Yeah, that seems right. I mean, I'm honestly
Correct.
just asking for clarification.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying, yeah.
Great
You know,
clarification,
so,
Director McGivern.
but if it was a group that had multiple teams, and one team was sponsored by Joe's Bar,
Mhm.
sorry, Joe, I don't believe there's actually a bar, but I'm just using it as an illustration. They couldn't have Bett Youth and Joe's Bar on the back.
Yeah, I think you're right. The bet has to be pure by itself. It can't be nested with any other type of,
Right.
any.
So like
imagery.
an
Organization or business or product or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's
some,
listed there.
so some organizations might have to make a choice.
Yes.
It's more important to get the sponsorship from the various bars and smoke shops and whatnot than it is to have the Bett logo, or it's more important to have the Bett logo than it is to have, a vape shop sponsored.
Well, that's why I just wanted to make sure I understand the clarification, because technically they could have those sponsorships from those companies so long as those companies were okay with not being on the same merchandise.
Yes.
So for instance, if they were to
They're not
say,
advertising it.
correct, if they were to say, I want your jersey to show my company on your back, and they're saying, well, we want the front of our jersey to say Bett, now we have a problem.
That's
Correct.
exactly right.
But if, let's say they have a list of these sponsors and they have, you know, merchandise to promote the fact that, hey, these guys are all helping contribute to our team or some such thing like this, but it doesn't have the Bett logo on that merchandise, that's something different,
And
and their
that's kind of a-
jersey just says
that's kind of-
Bett,
That's kind of a gray area.
then we're okay.
I don't know that I'm prepared to say absolutely either way at this point, that yes, that'd be fine, or no, that would not. You know, it's definitely worth, I think, staff deliberation as they develop practice.
Okay.
Would there be somebody that's like watching over this, that they would, I know like with the teams, if they have like a poster for their, the high school, they have a poster every year for their, each sport. Well, there's somebody that will be the one that decides yes and no, or it's just pure policy here? Like, can they turn it in and say, when they send in their application, this is what we're gonna do, and then it'll be approved, and then they're good to go, okay?
Right, it'll just be, do we have enough staff to
Right.
continually, fish around out there? No, but if we should come across something to that effect that does not meet the guidelines in the policy, then yes, we would have to send communication that says you are not able to, you will have to cease using that, right?
But I think you're, oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead, sister.
Part of A is also that the organizations would submit how they're gonna use the graphic
I think
as
that's what you
they
were
get
asking.
things
Yeah.
printed.
You were
and-
making sure somebody was
Somebody
readily
was
available to
overseeing it,
approve.
yeah.
I think the concern sometimes is there's deadlines to get, you know, merchandise paraphernalia, so maybe even
So they gotta
an
plan
add
that.
to this to say, maybe we say, we give a timeline, account for X amount of time to submit prior to when you need to order all this so that you can get the approval or some such thing like this. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, don't submit something and you gotta put an order in tomorrow, that might not cross,
I
right?
can
So
tell you
just say,
that.
hey, X amount of time in advance to whatever, or something like this.
You know, there's some
And
crazy times of
ensure
year
that
when
there's
you
a
can-
responsibility on both sides, there's a
Yeah.
responsiveness from the district, but then there's also an understanding from whoever's coming in to say, all right, hey, I got it in, should get something back.
Yeah, and that, these bullets do address that. There would be the application process, they have to sign a licensing agreement. There's that disclaimer statement that would have to go on public-facing websites and on their vendor store. So, I don't know, who's a vendor out there?
Adcraft.
Adcraft,
Adcraft.
thank you, whatever the first one is. That when they're selling their store, there would be a disclaimer statement that I kind of read earlier. But yes, as part of the application process, we would need to know how it's being used, what exactly the graphic is that they're using, where it's intended to be used, so that it can be approved.
Cause
And
it
we'll
needs to
continue to
also,
work with Zach as well through the athletic activities office, since he works with our coaches very closely, to get their apparel approved.
yeah, I would make sure that there's I would make sure that there's information on like wherever the online application is about lead time. And then make sure that also on there are the, you know, the color specs, the sizing specs. I know that a lot of that's already there, but that will have to, you know, they'll have to like have that signed off on, right? To have that proof given to probably Zach or whoever is designated as that, and then have enough lead time, to get it back to them.
And it will get, the city went through some similar processes with color standardization, logo sizes, and after about 6 months, it became a lot easier because your vendors all have the codes and
Yeah.
like, you know.
No, just,
Celeste, sorry, I just wanna, because we were on the topic about specs. Celeste, you've worked with a lot of the vendors in the area, right? And shared our branding guidelines with
Yeah.
them as well.
Yeah.
So this should be no surprise to
And the
any of
branding
us.
guide has the PMS colors, the fonts, all that stuff is in there.
Do they have to use the vendors that the school district uses?
No, they wouldn't, but I contacted what I found for our primary vendors. There were probably like 6 or 8 of them. And then I sent them the branding guide and the information.
And so Celeste has built a district branding guideline webpage. You can find that under the About Us area, and it's got exactly what everybody just asked for. There's a link to the branding guidelines. There's a link to the board policy directly there, so you don't have to go to board policy and try and find it. There's a link to the logo use request form, and then it outlines where we permit it, the uses, the different color fonts that you have on here that are in the branding guideline. And then a bit of piece on the history of the graphic. So hopefully that makes it easy for our community to access that as well. Linda, did you have anything else? Director Linda?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, chess club had been mentioned as an example.
Microphone, Richard. Sorry for speaking.
Chess club had been mentioned as an example. As I'm reading this, like, any, like, student club is already in current practice, because that's within the district, funded through the activities fund, et cetera, et cetera.
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay. Well, as we try to find kids, David, yes, sir, go ahead.
I got a couple questions for you, just looking through the documents in, third party here. Are these one-year agreements, are they multi-year agreements for perpetuity?
We were talking about that earlier. I think this is probably something that's reviewed annually to see how it's going.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the third box, the vendors, I was confused on the middle box. Sale of district branded items specifically representing district, a contract for use will stipulate percentage of proceeds, license fee to go to the district. Has that been set through precedent yet? Are we talking 5%, 10%, a solid dollar amount yet?
So, currently, the only one we have, is with Vibrant Coffee House. They have a high school store with PV and Bettendorf, and it's 10% of the proceeds. So we have that agreement. We've had a request from, the Pro Shop at, Palmer Hills. They have some hats with the Bet on it, so I was waiting for the board to have a meeting so we can discuss whether or not we continue with percentage, see how you guys landed on if we're eliminating or doing like an A. But, we've had some discussion about it might make sense for some places to do a licensing fee. I know some school districts have a licensing fee about $500. It all depends upon how much revenue an organization is expecting to make. So we don't have that totally ironed out yet, and I would love maybe to meet with you to get your perspective on it.
So on the royalty side, for the commercial entities, I think that's subject to a per contract basis, that just because someone, in this case, says 10%, I don't see that being the same for everybody. It kind of just fits the objectives, what they're trying to do, and their capacity to handle more or less, and if it fits also our core values. So I see that more and more with staff than their negotiations with the commercial entity and what that percentage is.
I recently was at 2 different retailers and saw T-shirts for local high schools, and I didn't know if, I didn't take a look to see if Bettendorf T-shirts were in there or not, and if that was part of, some of the local vendors that we had already worked with or so forth. This was both at a grocery store and a local general retailer, and so just, it's out there in the market, and so again, somebody might latch onto that, and so, just awareness there. And then my last point would be more of a question. What if somebody uses the word BETT period as an abbreviation? not, and maybe block letters, not the curvy, Bett here. Is that separate enough, from our trademark, or have we come across that yet? I'm not sure.
Better together.
Well, not to better together, but I'm just, if I was to design, if I'm an organization here and I'm like, you know what, we're just gonna abbreviate the word Bettendorf.
So we did have that conversation. There was something that came up, it's been a little while, and we checked with our lawyer, and his feedback was that it would create confusion in the community because people would see it as a district. That,
Okay, so we would appeal to have that discussion. Okay.
That would be one where we would have a conversation about not using that as they move forward.
Those are my questions.
I have a question that piggybacks off of his. Sorry, I have a question that piggybacks off of his, or maybe a suggestion that we create maybe a rubric or a set of levels for that, vending piece where, say, if it's a community youth program, this is the percentage. If it's a company, it's this percentage, you know what I mean? And maybe we work together to give it almost like levels.
so for.
Because that way, we're not saying, well, you know, I don't want there to be any confusion in the community that, like, one group is being charged more or less than another.
Well, the groups aren't being charged, the only people we're charging are people who are commercially selling.
Okay, well, I wanted to make, is that true, right? Okay, so it's only people who are commercially selling.
Yeah.
So if it's for a community youth program, they're not paying any fees.
Not at this time.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that because that whole conversation, to me, sounded like we were gonna be charging those people,
No,
and I just wanted to
Just
clarify that.
for-profit entities
Right, okay.
have the licensing or royalty agreement that is,
Okay,
dynamic depending upon their situation for staff to sort
Okay,
out.
I'm not sure that was
Any one of our
super clear, so.
nonprofits, if they can make it done, we're here to be supportive and they
Right.
can keep the money.
So, thank you for clarifying. As Les stated a few minutes ago, in doing some research, there are districts across the state that do charge either a percentage or a flat fee for their community programs or others to access their registered trademark logo. At this time, in that group, if we expand the group from district sanctioned to include our coach camps in the summer and our community youth programs, we have not, there has not been a decision, or there was not thought to have them charge either a royalty fee or a flat fee to access the logo.
That's where it stands right now, right? That's the decision that was made to not, okay.
While other districts do, and others gave feedback that we should, we decided not to propose
I think
that
that's a
tonight.
good decision.
Money away from.
Yeah, I think that's a good decision.
Okay, my comments are, government just has a natural tendency to find the most risk-free answer in whatever it does. And unfortunately, the risk-free answer is often the least amount of fun. So it's incumbent upon us as policymakers to evaluate policy. How do we get the most fun with the least amount of risk? And I think trying out our recommended option A here to open up more opportunities for people, and we'll see how it goes. And we evaluate policy regularly. If it's this season it's not working out, we're gonna give our community some additional trust, okay? So, we're gonna rely on some people to self-police themselves. We can't govern all of this. And we'll have the written agreements. If we have to do more governance, we can pull things back. But for now, I think, this is new. We're in a new process here, a new trademark, new area to develop precedent. And I think opening that up a little bit more in the middle selection is a palatable solution. And I think we'll kind of wind this meeting up if we have consensus on that direction.
So do we have to change our policy, or we can just administratively? do
Because
it?
the policy currently states that other groups can submit written
Okay.
requests for approval through the superintendent or designee. Tonight we're clarifying what other groups could be.
Perfect, thank you.
No, thank you for asking. Any other questions, concerns, comments?
The application and that process is all gonna be linked into 909, or will it be on the website?
It's already there,
On the
under our
website?
district
On the website?
branding
Okay,
guideline
good.
page.
So does,
Sounds it all up and running.
does the staff have what they need to move forward with pending applications?
We do.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All
Thank
right,
you for
well,
the discussion.
thank you for my fellow board members for being available. This is why we get paid the big bucks.
See you guys Wednesday.
We'll be back for Wednesday, and do we have a motion
So
to
moved.
adjourn? All right. Look at that, and we're out before 6:10.
What?
Absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, veterans.
You guys can undo your microphones, please. It's me. I was secretary tonight.
I didn't think about it.
Oh, your jacket's out. Oh, wow. Okay. I just made sure you knew your coat was there.
I think it's like some third party.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know what the rate is. I just-
Yeah, something. Okay. Well, I can do, we're doing a lot of speculation. I usually, I don't go this way, usually.
Drugs. Yeah, I heard you were doing pharmaceutical sales, so you doing that. Linda, thank you. Thanks for your time earlier today too.
If I could get myself.
Yeah.
Thanks for your work.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, for me,
I mean, the Met profile. And, okay.